So I'm Jack Page. I was born in Starkville, Mississippi. Was born to Hazel and William Page. At the time I was born, I had two older brothers. They were 13 and 14 years older than I was. My biological father at that time apparently had developed a drinking problem. And eventually, when I was 18 months old, my mother had to take us and leave, come to Jackson. So when we moved to Jackson, my mother met my stepdad, and she married him probably around the time I was 3 or 4. But before that time, my mother would describe my biological father to me, and I remember that probably being 3, 4 years old and her talking about my biological father. But I couldn't put my hands on him, so I didn't really know who he was. He was in the hospital, the VA hospital, when I was 5 years old in Jackson. And she took my two older brothers to see him. And I was curious, so I decided I would go with them. But much to my demise, they would not let a small child go past the lobby in a hospital at that time, so I was not able to see him. So from that point forward, around the age of 5, my stepdad's two older sons and his daughter came to live with us. So at that point, we had a house full. And being a small kid, having 4 older brothers, 2 stepbrothers, 2 full brothers, and a stepsister, I just thought that was great. It was great for me as a kid. And they spent time with me. And then my half-brother came along right about that time when I was 5 years old. So that put 7 children in the house. And it was a lot like the Brady Bunch, but eventually it became dysfunctional. There were issues. And in part of that, there was some confusion for me because I knew that my 2 oldest brothers knew their dad, my 2 stepbrothers knew their dad, stepsister knew their dad, and my half-brother knew his dad. Now, I had a stepdad, but I didn't know who the biological father was. So when I was 9 years old, there was a break in the family again. My 2 older brothers got into an argument. My stepdad got in the middle of it. It felt dangerous to my mother, so she did what she did the first time. She took us and moved to a lake house that we had. There was a separation in the family. And that year I was 9 years old, that was a turning point for me. That same year, my biological father passed. And I was still curious about who he was. So my 2 older brothers were going to the funeral, and I said, hey, I want to go too. And they looked at me and said, are you sure? I said, I'm sure. And my only intention at 9 years old was to go see what the man looked like. So we get to the funeral, and it's a closed casket. So once again, you don't get to see the man that you hear as your father. And I remember standing at the funeral, and my oldest brother just standing there stoic, and my next brother in line fighting back tears. And I found myself wondering, should I cry or not? Didn't know what to do with the emotions. So we come back to town, and eventually my mother and stepdad get back together, but things were really never the same. There was chaos in the house, and around that time frame was the Vietnam era, so all my brothers joined the military. They were gone. That left myself and my younger brother at the house. And in reality, looking back, I realized my stepfather was much closer and fathered my younger brother more. Most of our relationship was when he needed me to help him with something, and it was, I enjoyed doing that with him. I learned a lot from him. A lot of what I know today I learned from my stepdad, and he was a provider. He was always there. But a lot of that chaos in the house and not really having any boundaries as a child, by the time I was 13 years old, it took me in some difficult directions with alcohol, with drugs, starting sexual activity early, and that continued on and off through my life. When I was 21 years old, my stepdad and mom split up for the final time. And I remember thinking, here we go again. You're losing the only father you've known. And it was difficult because there was definitely a break in the family with the stepbrothers, the full brothers, and I was trying to figure out where to take sides, so that was difficult. And I didn't have a father figure to direct me in that. The chaos continued into my adult life. The drinking, the drugs continued. My first marriage was a shambles. It lasted 3.5 years. Second marriage lasted 7 years. Third marriage lasted 12 years. And there was a lot of dysfunction on my part in those marriages and with my behavior as a man, as an adult. In between my first and second marriage, I met a lady, and we had a child together, my son Jason. And my story's a little different because we didn't get married. When Jason was born, I wasn't at the birth. I didn't get to see my son born like most men do. And I remember the first time I saw Jason at 3 months old. He was sitting in a car seat. They had gotten him ready for me to take to my house over the weekend. And I just remember him looking up at me and smiling. And at that point, I was done. I mean, I fell in love with him at that point. It was a true bond at that point. Through some situations, difficult situations, I got custody of Jason when he was 18 months old. And I remember the day his grandmother brought him into my office. They were bringing him to me to live at my house, and they bring him into my office in a diaper with a bottle. And I'm like, wow, what do you do with this? Even though I'd been seeing him on the weekends, he's full-time responsibility 7 days a week at this point. Becoming a father, I didn't have all the tools I needed to be a dad. I had watched my oldest brother with his kids, so I tried to pick up what I knew by example, and I tried to figure the rest of it out on my own, which some of it worked and some of it didn't. I didn't know how to initiate boundaries well as a father because I had not had boundaries in my life as a child and growing up. So trying to figure that out was difficult. And somewhere along the way, in my 50s, I was 50 years old actually. I met up with some guys, My marriage was on its final leg. Met up with some guys, and they talked me into going to a men's prayer group that meets on Thursday. And they talked me into doing a men's weekend, which I was apprehensive about because it was out in the woods with some guys I didn't really know. But one of them stayed on me. He's still my friend to this day, Phil Harden. And I sat on that deck, it was in 2009, with 7 other men, and was able to tell my story from childhood up, which was something I really didn't want people to know up to that point, because a lot of it was painful. And you know, nobody got up and walked away. They just loved on me and accepted me for where I was in life and with my whole story, as broken as it was. And eventually, my son and I sat on that same deck, and we got to know everything about each other that weekend. And it was a beautiful thing. It opened our relationship up. One of the tasks that weekend was to write each other a letter. And he was able to write his that weekend and read it to me in front of the rest of the men, which I thought was powerful and brave. And it was healing. But I was not able to put my letter together that weekend, and that was okay. If you weren't, you could give it to your son or your father later. So that father-son weekend was in January 2019. And it took me until July to write my letter to my son. Because I would sit down, try to figure out what to say. It was like writing a novel for me. I would wad it up and throw the paper in the trash can. So one day I just grabbed my journal and I sat down and I wrote the letter to him. And when I visited him in Oregon, where he lives now, we had been on a motorcycle ride to the coast, and we were coming back. It was late in the afternoon. The sun was setting on the mountains across the river in Washington, and on the other side was the Columbia River, a place called the Rowena Gorge. I'll never forget it. And I'd been carrying that letter with me, wondering when I was going to read it to him. And this is what I wrote. I hope I can get through this. I'm going to take my glasses off. So the letter is entitled, "You Have What It Takes." Son, this is a letter to you. Our journey together began 30 years ago. It has been a journey of both ups and downs. It is a journey I would not trade for the world, because God has allowed me to be part of your life, to be your father. I first thought our journey began the first day I saw you, but I now know that our journey began in your mother's womb as God was molding me through the trials and tribulations of life. You were born on September the 10th, 1988 at Hines General Hospital in Jackson, Mississippi. The first time that I saw you was in a picture that your mother sent me. First time I met you was at your grandmother's house in Raymond. I looked down at you and you looked up at me and smiled. You had my heart at that point, and our physical relationship as father and son began. At that time, I was 29 years old and you were just a few months old. When you lived with your mom, I always looked forward to seeing you. At first, I would pick you up every other weekend. You came to live with me permanently when you were 18 months old, and I welcomed you with open arms. David Neighbors and I were roommates at the time. That probably explains his deep affection for you and why he always asked about you. You and I shared the upstairs bedroom in our townhouse that David and I rented. You slept in your crib right next to my bed. Eventually, I purchased our first home, There were kids in the neighborhood, and you were always outside seeking adventure as little boys do. As you began to grow, you got involved in sports. You started soccer at age 6 with the Smith Barney Bulls. Next came baseball, eventually track, and eventually a year of football in middle school. By the time you were 12, you were growing into quite a young athlete, and you just got better from there. I know I was hard on you at times, but I want you to know that I have always been proud of you. I've always thought that you were extremely smart. I believe that any struggles you had in school were directly related to the chaos going on around you, which I was a part of. I truly believe that you have the intelligence and the ability to take your education to whatever level you desire. I am proud of you for getting your associate's degree at Holmes, and even more proud of what you've accomplished at Mississippi State. Your Uncle Bill was so proud of you too. Even as a small boy, you were always very independent and outgoing. That has continued in your life as a man. After graduation, I thought you going to Idaho was an extremely brave thing to do as a young man. Thank you for allowing me to be part of your initial journey to Salmon. It helped me to begin to let go and to allow you to be the man that you have become, the man God intended you to be. And now you are living an adventure out west in Oregon and pursuing a career you are passionate about. Good place to start, son. At this point, I believe you are in a new season in life. You are doing work every day that you believe in. You are looking at possible career choices. You are exploring the adventure of having a home. You have also made a commitment to Lisa, your helpmate. You have also made a commitment to Lisa, your helpmate, your Ezra Conegdo. I'm so happy and excited for you. Son, I just want you to know I'm proud of you, I love you, and you do have what it takes to be a man and to accomplish whatever your heart desires. Dad. That was a beautiful moment for me, sitting in that gorge, reading that to my son. We were both in tears, and I'll never forget it. Once I sat on that deck in 2009, I had men that were walking with God, that were willing to walk along beside me, to father me, to mentor me, to help me set boundaries in my life, something I had never had. My whole life I was running from God. Been in a lot of churches on and off. My family didn't go to church, but I can remember numerous times the pastor or somebody in the church telling me, hey man, when you get a minute, I'd love to sit and talk to you. And I'd go, I'll get back with you. That was always my line. And things changed once I sat on that deck in 2009. God was in it. He changed my life that weekend. I wanted men to walk with me then. I wanted men to father me. I wanted men to mentor me. And looking back through my story, and there's a lot of it, I know God was there the whole time now, through the good and the bad. And I'm thankful for that.